Have you ever heard that King David and Jonathan from the Bible were gay or bi? Hi, I'm Jeremy. I'm a deep skeptic, also a pastor. I remember the first time somebody told me this about David and Jonathan when I was an evangelical and I was super angry and offended, and I kind of ignored what they said. Then a couple of years later, somebody said the same thing to me, and I realized I needed to look into it. I needed to figure out what they were talking about. And I looked into this Bible verse, and I went into it just saying, okay, this is not a thing. There's no way this could possibly be a thing. And then I read this verse, and this Bible passage, let me read it. All right, so I am, of course, reading from the New Revised Standard Updated Edition. That is the version of the Bible that scholars say is the most accurate, and definitely want to have accuracy here. Here's the verse. It's in 1 Samuel chapter 18. It says, "When David had finished speaking to Saul, the soul of Jonathan," here it is, this is part. "The soul of Jonathan was bound to the soul of David, and Jonathan loved him as his own soul. Saul took him that day and would not let him return to his father's house. Then Jonathan made a covenant with David because he loved him as his own soul. Jonathan stripped himself of the robe that he was wearing and gave it to David, and his armor, and even his sword, and his bow, and his belt." That's the verse. They were bound soul to soul. And then there's this moment where Jonathan takes all of his clothes off. He is completely naked and gives all the clothes to David and all the armor. So when I read that, back in my days of being completely brainwashed by evangelicalism, I was shook. I was like, WTF, like what is happening here? And I started doing research, and it's not clear. Like if you look for scholars and you ask them this question, the scholars will say like, we just don't know. We don't have enough data. Like it's equally plausible that this ceremony and these words were meant to convey that David and Jonathan had a romantic relationship, that they were deeply in love and committed to each other, something very similar to what people who are gay in our modern culture experience in their like deeply committed relationships when they find those relationships. Or it's talking about a completely platonic relationship that is just very deep and very intimate, a relationship that sometimes straight men who haven't been just completely ruined by the cultural homophobia can be in intimate, deep relationships with other straight men and not be romantically or sexually attracted to them. It could be either one of those two things, but it's not clear. So what do we do when it's not clear, when there's not academic consensus, when there's a Bible verse that could be translated in one way or the other, and neither of those two ways is like hateful or mean or bigoted, right? Well, you get to choose. And that's wonderful because I know people who choose both of these different options for this verse, and it's great. Like I have queer friends who are Christian who read this verse and they find a home in it. They say, yes, no, this is me. I know this kind of relationship. I know this desire for intimacy, for soul to soul bonding. I know this. I've experienced this before. If I haven't experienced it, this is what I want. This right here. This is me. And then I have straight friends who say, no. I've had that friendship before. I don't have one now, but I know what that's like. In that friendship, man, I long for that friendship again. And it doesn't really matter which one you are, which one you decide, because the goal is to find your place in the story of God and to find spiritual texts that resonate with you and say, actually, yes, this kind of relationship is holy. And I want to experience that. Whether you're a queer person looking for the romantic relationship that binds you soul to soul with someone, makes you a soulmate, or whether or not you are a straight person that is looking for the friendship, the platonic relationship that is so healthy and life-giving, finding that holiness in the relationship here, man, I mean, that's the good stuff.